Do you think you know all the scary creatures that like to live in abandoned places? Well, I'm here to tell you that you probably don't know about all the creatures that go bump in the night. There are things that would shock and amaze you lurking in the deepest, darkest places of the world. We're here to tell you about one of those. The skin collectors of Boothbay Harbor, Maine. The skin collectors have a deep and rich history going back thousands and thousands of years. Native Americans were the first to report seeing these creatures in stories passed down orally, but they have likely been around much longer than that. The ancient stories talk about pale creatures with long limbs and humped backs lurking in the shadows and moving around quietly. The earliest recorded story of the skin collectors tells of a young boy who spent his days not heeding the advice of his parents. While his brothers and sisters worked long hours throughout the day to make sure they were safe and fed, the young boy spent his days playing and doing things he wasn't supposed to be doing. The young boy was always full of energy and it seemed like nothing could ever get him to stop. Well, except for swimming, that is. The young boy loved to swim and knew that his parents worried about him when he did. So, every time he went swimming he would strip down out of all his clothes so that they would stay dry and his parents wouldn't find out. One fateful afternoon while his family was working, the young boy decided that he would go for a swim again. Like usual, he stripped down and dove into the water without hesitation. It was warm out, so the water felt amazing. He closed his eyes and floated on the surface of the water. As he opened his eyes he looked over to where he had piled his clothes but saw nothing there. Angry, the boy swam over and walked out of the water and over to where his clothes had been. Convinced that one of his siblings had taken his clothes as a joke, the boy cried out their names and told them to bring his clothes back. But none of his siblings answered him. So, he walked further away from the water's edge and closer to the woods, hoping to find his clothes. As the boy stood there shivering cold, he heard strange whispers coming from the woods. At first he thought it was just the wind making noises as it passed through the trees. But the whispers were constant and growing louder. He called out and told his siblings to stop playing with him, but the whispers kept growing louder and louder. His shivering began to get worse, but now it wasn't because of the cold, but because he was genuinely afraid. As he stood there shivering, he frantically began looking for the source of the whispers in the woods. He knew that he needed help, and he needed fast. Just as he was about to yell for help, he felt long bony fingers cover his mouth from behind. He tried calling out for help but no sound came out. As day turned to night, his family became worried and went looking for him. His siblings knew where he liked to swim and they hurried to show his parents where it was. But when they got there they found nothing. There were no footprints. Normally, that would be strange enough alone. Except, when the villagers tried looking for any signs of life around the area, there was none. No fish were swimming in the water, no birds were sitting in the trees, and even the bugs were gone. It was like the area had been completely removed of all life except for the plants and trees. The villagers spent days looking for the boy, but they found nothing. No clothes, no footsteps, no body, absolutely nothing was found. It was as if the boy had just disappeared completely from the earth. After the villagers stopped looking, the boy's parents kept looking for him for months until winter set in and they began to give up hope. They began to tell themselves that maybe he had drowned in the water or that some creature had carried him off into the woods. But those were just stories parents tell themselves to be logical. His youngest brother never gave up hope. When the snow melted and spring set in, the brother began looking for his lost brother. He went back to the spot where he thought his brother would have last been over and over and searched the area but found nothing. He spent long days in the hot sun looking for his brother and vowed never to give up hope. That is, until one fateful afternoon. As he rested on the shore along the water, he took some water and splashed it on his face to clear off some of the sweat he had collected from searching for his brother all day. He washed his face and hands, and when he was finished he grabbed part of his shirt and rubbed his face dry. As he opened his eyes, in the distance he could see a faint figure peeking its face from around the base of a tree. He could only see half of the face from where he stood, but he could tell by the hair that it was obviously his brother. Overjoyed, he began to move towards what he thought was his brother. But, as he approached, the figure moved its face back behind the tree. Startled, the brother called out his brother's name and asked him if he was okay. But, the figure just kept moving back. As the brother came within a few feet, he began to hear whispering. The whispering started to get louder and louder. Suddenly, the brother stopped. He saw what looked like long spider legs with long sharp metal-looking nails wrapping their way around the tree where he thought he had seen his brother. Then suddenly he could see that whatever was behind the tree was standing up. Its legs were long and it stood about 10 feet tall. It had a large humped back and its legs were thin and looked like hooves. The whispering grew louder and louder, and he could see the face sticking out from behind the tree more now. He could tell by the hair that this was definitely the hair, face, and skin of his brother. But, whatever this creature was, it was definitely not the brother that he knew. This creature was gigantic with pale skin that looked rotten and smelled that way too. The whispering continued to get louder and louder, but the creature did not move. The boy was a great hunter and a marksman with a bow and arrow. Somehow, maybe intuitively, he realized that he was holding a bow and arrow in his hands but was too terrified to fire. As the whispering grew louder and louder, his hands began to tremble. But, out of pure survival instinct, he raised his bow and arrow up and fired at the creature standing next to the tree. Normally, he would have hit an object no larger than a pebble with an arrow from a distance of 20 feet. But, out of his fear and trembling, his arrow missed its mark. Rather than hitting the creature between its eyes, the arrow grazed its cheek. It left a deep cut that appeared to open and reveal what was underneath its skin. From beneath the skin, the boy could see large bloody gums with a long row of sharp teeth that stuck out. The creature had no mouth. The boy's arrow had revealed what was underneath, and it was horrible. The creature let out a loud shrieking noise and grasped at its face. It quickly turned and began to run away from the boy. The boy, scared as he was, took the opportunity to run away and back to the village, where he told his family and everyone that would listen about what he had seen. The villagers were quick to gather a hunting party to go after the creature, but they found nothing. The boy showed them where the event had taken place, but there was nothing there. The arrow was gone and all the footsteps were wiped clean. Even the footsteps of the boy were missing, and it looked like he had imagined it all. Angrily, the villagers gave up the search and became angry with the boy for what they felt like was a story the boy had made up. Even the boy's parents did not believe him. But, the boy knew what he had seen. He never again went back into the woods, and he never went looking for his brother again. He knew that something was out there, and he wasn't about to go looking for it again. All we know about the skin stealers are stories like these that have been passed from throughout the centuries. As time has passed, more stories of tall creatures with rotten skin have been passed down as myth and legend. We know that they usually make whispering noises that get louder as they get closer to their intended target. We know that they are usually attracted to human beings with clean skin, like after they have bathed or washed themselves off. It is believed that their whispers carry ancient sounds in them that paralyze their victims and make them vulnerable to attack. The ends of their fingers are razor sharp and are almost metallic when seen. Their nails have been rumored to be the sharpest and strongest metal that is unknown to man. It is likely that their nails can cut through just about anything with ease. So we warn you that if you are ever in Boothbay Harbor, Maine, and decide that you want to jump into the water by yourself, then be careful you don't run into one of these creatures. We do not know if all of the legends are true, but the stories of missing people there continue to pile up. Urban legends are just that until you end up being one of their victims or the victims of lack of knowledge. People have gone looking for the creatures only to come back empty-handed. Well, that is if they ever come back at all. Be warned. because nobody has ever successfully returned from spotting one of these creatures and we don't think anyone ever will.